So the English Premier League is back this weekend, fresh off from the UEFA Champions League midweek games that happened. We saw Arsenal defeating Inter Milan by 3 goals to 1 to make sure they progress to the next stage of the Champions League. They'll be heading into this weekend with much confidence against another confident side, that is Manchester United. Yes, because Manchester United will also they'll be coming up against Arsenal in a big game coming up this weekend. We also saw Manchester City losing during the UEFA Champions League this weekend. They'll be coming up against Wolves, plus other matches coming up in the La Liga and Serie A. So let's take a look at some of the matches that will be coming up in over the weekend. Just like I said, Arsenal will be coming up against Manchester United. That will be a great game to watch because Arsenal, just like I said, after defeating Inter Milan away from home by 3 goals to 1, they may have that kind of advantage when it comes to playing more games heading into this particular game. But for Manchester United, remember they defeated Manchester City in the Manchester Derby by 2 goals to 0. For them, during the midweek, they were not in action, and so probably the advantage for Manchester United will be that they may have more racing time over Arsenal, who played against Inter Milan this midweek in the UEFA Champions League. But that will be a great game to watch. Looking at these two sides, you see, I mean, Manchester United, they are back on form in the English Premier League. It's been a while since you saw this kind of Manchester United play in the English Premier League. So heading into this particular encounter, it would be a very, very interesting one. I mean, for us now, they are looking to win their first Premier League title for the first time in a while. For Manchester United, it may not be, even if it may not be about winning the Premier League, they will look at how they will fare well in this particular game. Looking at Michael Carrick being their manager for until the end of the season, and so that game is going to be a very, very interesting to watch. But now let's take a look at other games that will be coming up that has to do with Manchester City and Wolves. Wolves, we all know, hasn't been the Wolves that we used to see playing in the English Premier League. They'll be coming up against Manchester City, a team that has lost 2 consecutive big games. Yes, that is the Manchester Derby against Manchester United, losing by 2-0. And then in the UEFA Champions League, losing by 3 goals to 1. This should give Wolves some much confidence heading into this game, but Wolves should be a bit worried because Manchester City would want to make sure that they win this particular game heading into this weekend in this particular encounter. But moving on from Manchester City, let's move on to Tottenham Hotspur, because Tottenham Hotspur, we all know how they've been struggling in the English Premier League for some couple of time, but then they've been doing well in the UEFA Champions League, winning by 2 goals to 0 during their match, winning their game in the UEFA Champions League. But this weekend they'll be coming up against Burnley away from home in another crunch encounter. Thomas Frank, there isn't that much pressure on Thomas Frank since he took over as head coach of Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur hasn't had a quite good result in the English Premier League, but when it comes to the UEFA Champions League, you see them perform crying the results day in and day out. But then this particular game is going to be a good test of run. I mean, you even see smaller teams beating Tottenham Hotspur in the English Premier League, but then when it comes to the Champions League, you see them dominate. But then this will be a very, very good test for Thomas Frank, looking at the fact that Conor Gallagher, he is a new man who has joined Tottenham Hotspur from Atletico Madrid for this particular transfer. And so let's see how Tottenham Hotspur will fare. But I think Kudos may not feature for this particular game due to injury. But then they also have quite a number of players in this heading into this particular weekend. Hopefully they can get good results in this particular one. And so now let's look at Bournemouth and Liverpool. And Bournemouth, quite unfortunately for them, since they lost Antoine Semenyo to Manchester City, they are finding a new striker, a new replacement for him, and they'll be playing against Liverpool. For Liverpool, they won by 3 goals to 0 against Olympique Marseille, and so heading into this particular encounter with much confidence and hoping to get all this 3 maximum points. For them, they say that they've not given up the Premier League title hopes. They believe that they can still win the Premier League. But let's see what happens in this particular encounter. That is Liverpool coming up against Bournemouth away from home. But they shouldn't write off Bournemouth, because despite the fact that Antoine Semenyo has led Bournemouth, it doesn't mean that they don't have the quality of players in that squad. I mean, Bournemouth still have quality in that squad. So Liverpool shouldn't head into this particular game with too much confidence, because Bournemouth is also another side that has been grinding results in the English Premier League over a couple of seasons. Bournemouth are starting life after Antoine Semenyo, but that shouldn't be a big problem for them heading into this particular game. Hopefully, they get to grind the results in this particular fixture. But let's talk about Aston Villa and Newcastle United, because Newcastle also are doing well quite in the Premier League. They have Johan Wissa, Anthony Gordon, and all the likes of them playing for them in this particular encounter. They'll be coming up against an informed Aston Villa side. Unai Emery, quite a great job with Aston Villa heading into this particular encounter. But it's going to be a very, very good one for the fact that Newcastle United will be playing at home against Aston Villa in this particular encounter. And now let's talk about Chelsea. Yes, because Chelsea, they had a slim margin win in the Champions League during the midweek. They'll be coming up against Crystal Palace. For Crystal Palace, I think Chelsea can have a big advantage in this particular game mentally, with the fact that for Newcastle United, Jean-Philippe Mateta has also announced that he wants to leave the club this particular month, looking at the fact that McGuire has left. You also saw Eberechi Eze also leaving the team for some couple of time now. McGuire has left, and Jean-Philippe Mateta also said that he wants to leave the squad this month. But the big question remains as to whether he is going to feature in this particular game against Chelsea. And remember, during the first round of matches, that game ended a draw at the Stamford Bridge. So they'll be going to the Selhurst Park as Chelsea travel to face Crystal Palace in this particular encounter. So now that is it for the English Premier League. But now let's talk about some few games in the Spanish La Liga. So Real Madrid will be heading into this weekend's La Liga against Villarreal. These two teams were involved in the UEFA Champions League. Villarreal not really having a good campaign in the Champions League. They find themselves bottom. For Real Madrid, they still believe that their title hopes, the hopes of winning the La Liga this season is still alive. Looking at the fact that Barcelona also lost in the La Liga over the last weekend. But for Real Madrid, it's just going to be a very, very good one for them heading into this particular encounter. Because Vinicius Junior to join the Champions League, he scored a goal. He was involved in joining the goal scoring as Real Madrid won by 6-1, and he was adjudged the MVP for that particular match. And so Vinicius Junior will head into this particular game with much confidence heading into this weekend's La Liga. But for Barcelona will be at home against Real Oviedo. Real Oviedo do not find themselves well in the Spanish La Liga. For Barcelona, they will look to make sure that they continue to topple the La Liga in this particular season. They've had quite a good run winning the Spanish Super Cup against Real Madrid. And so this particular weekend should be a very, very good one for them after their Champions League triumphant. Coming up against Real Oviedo, a bottom place side in the Spanish La Liga. It should be a very, very good one for them. Let's talk about Atletico Madrid, because Atletico Madrid are not finding themselves quite well both in the Champions League and then in the Spanish La Liga. Hopefully this weekend, if they're able to get good results, they will be coming up against Mallorca at home. That is a Wanda Metropolitano. Hopefully, if they're able to get good results, they should be able to grind a good result, because for Diego Simeone, he hasn't really had quite a good run both in the Champions League and then the Spanish La Liga, getting out of the Spanish Super Cup. But then this weekend this particular game should be a good one for them. I don't know if I should see Atletico Madrid winning this particular game. If they need to win this game, they need to play well to make sure that they win this particular game. Unlike the way they play their defensive game, they should be able to have a free flow in whenever they are in possession. And so let's see who wins this particular encounter. Now Bayern Munich, they are also back in the Bundesliga, that is the German Bundesliga. Hopefully to continue what they do, trashing teams left, back, center, right. And this weekend they'll be coming up against Augsburg at home. Bayern Munich, they have sealed qualifications to the next round, that is a round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. Hopefully this weekend against Augsburg, they can continue to do, whatever they do. Vincent Company, he now has most of the full house. Jamal Musiala is back. He's back with the squad after a long-term injury during the Club World Cup. Hopefully, he's back this weekend. He definitely will be playing this game against Augsburg in the German Bundesliga. But for Borussia Dortmund, another team that's they haven't really fared well in the German Bundesliga, but then probably maybe they may be grinding the results in the Champions League. But then if they really want to play Champions League next season again, they need to buckle up. And if they really need to win the German Bundesliga, they need to do very, very well heading into this particular game against Union Berlin in the German Bundesliga. Let's see. Hopefully they can get good results in this particular game. But I don't see Borussia Dortmund winning this particular game, despite the fact that maybe Union Berlin, they may be a team that you may underrate, but then they're also doing quite well. But I don't expect Borussia Dortmund to win this particular encounter in the German Bundesliga. So now let's talk about PSG, because PSG didn't really have quite the good run of results in the Champions League, losing by 2-1 against Sporting. Hopefully this weekend against Auxerre in the French League. For PSG, we all know they always continue to grind the results. But for Luis Enrique and his teammates and his team, they haven't really. Probably they may be doing well in the French League, but hopefully I'm looking forward to see PSG bounce back this weekend in the French League against Auxerre away from home, and probably let's see how many goals they'll be scoring. I expect PSG to win this particular game. So Juventus and Napoli were all involved this weekend during the UEFA Champions League. These two teams are set to meet, and Napoli, they are the defending champions of the Serie A. This is going to be a very, very difficult game for Napoli heading into this particular game against Juventus. Juventus, during the Champions League, midweek, they won their game. Napoli, on the other hand, were having some kind of struggle in the Champions League. But then I expect Juventus to cause an upset. For Napoli, if they should win this game, they must bring all their A games in this particular encounter, because Juventus should not be a team they should just write off just like that in this particular encounter. But it's going to be a very, very tough one for Napoli, who are the defending champions of the Italian Serie A. Let's see who wins this particular encounter. So now let's talk about Inter Milan, because Inter Milan, after losing by 3-1 against Arsenal in the Champions League, will head into the weekend against newly promoted side Pisa in the Italian Serie A at home. This time around, they'll be playing at the San Siro, so this should be a big home advantage for them heading into this particular weekend. I don't see their loss to Arsenal should be a setback for them heading into this particular game. Inter Milan, they've always shown resilience anytime they play, despite the fact that they lost against Arsenal. They played quite a good form, but unfortunately for them, they couldn't find the back of the net. They scored just one goal, with Arsenal scoring 3 goals in this particular encounter. So Inter Milan they are also trying to make sure that they win back the Italian Serie A after Napoli won the title, that is last season. Hopefully, let's see who gets the result. But I expect Inter Milan to win this particular game. So this is Almeida Sports on YouTube and all our social media channels. You can share your thoughts with us on the weekend games happening. Which of the teams are you supporting, and which of them do you think are going to win and in that respective league? And don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our social media pages. My name is Amos Mama Boy.